Today we paint Slapchop on Slapchop, or shall we call it shorter chop on chop. Chop on chop was sort of an accidental technique when I was painting my previous miniature or in my previous video. In my last video, I wanted to create more contrast and more color depth, but I wanted to just use speed paints. So we kinda came up with the Slapchop on Slapchop or chop on chop. Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my channel. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. Also, special thanks to The Army Painter for making this video possible. Chop on Chop is basically dry brushing black and white underpainting, and then we use speed paints on top. And then once that dries, we do another round of dry brushing with white paint, mostly on the highlight areas. And then we do another round of speed paints, but this time with lighter colored speed paints. In this manner, we create more color depth and more contrast to our painting. Today, we're painting a creature caster miniature. And we're painting with Army Painter speed paints and of course a little bit of War Paints Fanatic. Now we do the first round of Slapchop. This is a Zenithal Prime. I started with black primer and then gray primer and then white primer. The gray primer and white primer were painted mostly on the top left area of the model. To finish off the Zenithal Prime, we then dry brush white paint with my Foxbite dry brush. I applied the white paint via dry brush in a couple of passes to get really good coverage. Normally, I would advise for synthetic brushes, but for this one, I use a bigger number 3 Kolinsky brush. Now we apply the first round of speed paints. We start with Peachy Flesh, but Crusader Skin is also a good option. I almost always apply light colored speed paints twice to get a darker like finish to my painting. I like a darker base for my speed paint so that the highlighting later will be more prominent, especially for this technique which is chop on chop. We want a darker base so that the second round of speed paints will be more prominent. Now we're painting with Age Hide. Age Hide doesn't give you nice midtones, but it does give you very nice dark recesses. I usually encounter problems with hardened leather because it's too saturated. So if you're having problems with hardened leather, simply thin it down with speed paints medium. Also, if you're working with very saturated speed paints, make sure to work fast and use a bigger brush. Now we're painting with Zealot Yellow. I like Zealot Yellow because it gives me more contrast than the other yellows, especially Maize Yellow and Pastel Yellow. Those pastel-ish colors doesn't give the same contrast as Zealot Yellow. Camo Cloak is similar to hardened leather. It's very saturated, so if you're having problems, you may want to thin it down with speed paints medium. A good starting point for thinning down dark colored speed paints is roughly around 3 parts speed paint and 1 part medium. You saw in the video that a thinned down dark colored speed paint gives you enough coverage but at the same time gives you more control. Cloudburst Blue is very saturated, but this is only our base since we're going to do another round of Slapchop. Now you need to let this dry, and if you want, you could give this a quick coat of matte varnish. Now this is a shameless plug, but you may want to check our second Kickstarter. The link is down below. Now here are the speed paints that we used so far. The painting of the first round of Slapchop took me roughly less than an hour. If you decided to use matte varnish on top of the speed paints, I would recommend you let that cure for around 6 hours. Now once you've painted all the base colors with speed paints, we move on to doing the second round of Slapchop. Now we do another round of dry brushing with matte white. As usual, I'm using my Foxbite dry brush. Now you need to dry brush in 2 passes or even 3 to give you the best coverage. Depending on the finish that you want to achieve, you may apply the dry brushing only on the highlight areas or all over the model. If you want to finish faster, you could actually dry brush highlight colors like beige and tans, and you're practically finished. The second round of slop chop of this chop on chop technique should be faster, easier, and more fun. Like you just need to paint lighter colors on top of the previous slop chop. And for sure, you're going to create more contrast and more color depth. Now, the second round of slop chop is the most exciting part because you can really see the model as you finish or as you apply more speed paints. Try to experiment with different colors, different speed paints, and you could also use washes if you want more subtle effects. If you do decide to use the same colors that you use for the base colors, you will still produce better volume than with the standard slop chop. But I do recommend that you use different colors, different lighter colors so that you create more volume and also create more color depth to your painting. At this point of the painting, I was actually thinking that you could do chop on chop on chop until you're happy with the result. I think chop on chop on chop on chop is like it's going to look good as you fine-tune the highlights. It's a matter of just painting more highlights or doing dry brushing on the highlight areas as you fine-tune your painting. Like I said earlier, use lighter colors or even more vibrant colors than the colors that you use for the base. This one I'm using algae green and it's painted over the camo cloak earlier. Using more speed paint simply means more color depth. For this second round of slop chop, if you decide to use very saturated speed paints, I recommend you thin it down with speed paint medium. For the second round, you may want to thin down very dark and very saturated speed paints around 2 parts speed paints and 1 part speed paint medium. More speed paint medium means more transparency. However, you may need to apply it in more passes so that you get better coverage. Now we are finished with our chop on chop painting. Similar to the first round, you may want to apply a quick matte varnish. Now if you're finding value in this video, do give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Now before my final thoughts, a huge thanks to all my patrons at Patreon, Hajime Model Studio, and of course, The Army Painter for making this video possible. Now we are done. You can see that I added a bit more highlighting to the painting because it's a bust. It's so big. It's a display piece. But again, you saw that chop on chop was a very good starting point for this miniature, for this creature caster bust. Like I said earlier, I think we could do chop on chop on chop on chop until we're happy with the result. I did not film on video the highlighting with Warpaints Fanatic because it doesn't serve any purpose for this video. But I kinda applied more painting with Warpaints Fanatic, especially on the gold NMM and a little bit on the OSL on the beard. And of course, I painted the eyes and improved the painting of the fur of the bear on the right shoulder armor. However, I must say that our chop on chop technique was a really good starting point even if you plan to do a really nice display level painting. Our chop on chop technique took roughly around 2 hours including the drying time. So I think our chop on chop painting technique is a very good starting point even if you plan to do display level painting. But of course you have to finish with regular acrylics or Warpaints Fanatic. So, have you tried our chop on chop technique and did you get good results? Tell me at the comment section below. That's it, Pansit. I hope you like this video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. Until next video, guys. Bye! Now, if you like this video, do check out these other videos.